Grand Knight History, released on the 2011, is a tactical JRPG developed by VanillaWare, published by Marvelous Entertainment for the PSP system. Before we start, I'd like to mention that the PvP aspect of this game is pretty massive part of the game, but since it's a pretty old game and the server is dead, this review is just going to be related to the single story mode. Also, I'm playing the English patch version of the game since there is no official English release. Thanks to Fan Translator for their really hard work. Moving on, in this game, you play as a knight or a group of mercenaries working for a kingdom of your choice. There are 3 to choose from, and they are constantly at war with each other. Avalon is the kingdom of magic run by a Booba Witch. Union is the Night Kingdom led by the Blonde Knight and a lowly princess. And lastly, an ancient kingdom ruled by the Tyrant King, who is the father of the lowly princess. Yeah, of course, the lowly's gotta have some daddy issue. You start the game by creating these mercenaries, picking between Knight, Archer, and Mage. After you pick the main type of the unit, you can then choose the subtype, which is a different playstyle and can hold a different weapon. For example, while your main type can be Mage, your subtype can be Cleric, which can focus on healing and using Earth spell. You also get to pick some personality for the character as well. In effect, that's that growth when they were training, or something like that, I'm not sure. On the world map, the player is represented as a chess piece that move from one node to another. Every move will cost the player 1 point. When your point is depleted, you are forced to return to the castle. If you have 10, you can refill your cost 1 time to extend your time on the map. While traveling in the world of Grand Knight History, you will not only encounter the usual random encounter, but you can also encounter an events, such as meeting an NPC and they will ask you to fulfill a request, and they will end up paying you for it. Maybe a traveling merchant that will sell a rare item, a guy that asks you to consume a strange liquid that might or might not improve your stat growth, and other stuff. Apart from your chase piece, there is also a black piece representing a hard encounter on the map. They are usually tough to take on, especially early on in the game. Defeating black pieces also will recover your brave point. What is brave point, you ask? Well, all the units have up to 100 brave point, and this affects how well they will perform during the battle, such as how many times they can act. When you fight a non-black piece encounter, brave point will then be slowly depleted. Oh, and your character die, they will respawn with 1 HP at the end of the battle, but with 0 brave point. Another way to increase your brave point is to drink tons of wine or eat the food that the character like. If you force them to intake food they dislike, they will lose brave. However, in the case of wine, it just reduces the amount of bravery you gain, but you still gain them, so chuck away in my opinion. Of course, there are also the common locations you can visit, such as weapon shop, item shop, carrier that can save you some traveling point if you want to move to a further away map, Magic Crystal where you can encounter a really strong enemy, but defeating them will net you a really useful item in the game. As you can see, there are a ton of treasure chests laying around the map. There's the blue one that respawns much faster and is always at the same spot, compared to the gold one which respawns much slower and can be in a different location. But you have to be careful if you choose to open them, as you might run into one of the most iconic monsters in the video game history, the Mimic. Mimic in this game though is not too difficult to take on, but they can consume one of your party members, removing them from the map into, I don't know, a chest dimension or something, or maybe they're just chilling there in the mouth. All you got to do is punch the Mimic in the face though, and then your party member will return. Encounter a Mimic in this game in most cases still will yield you an item, so it is not too much of a problem. Apart from a treasure on the treasure chest node, sometimes you can find a treasure on an empty node as well, but you will have to press the investigate button when prompted. If you miss it because you input the move command too early, you can then walk back to the same node again and it should be there. I mean, treasure doesn't disappear because you miss it, right? It's still there. The only thing you're wasting is your cost point. Every time a week passes, the game will auto spawn a new quest for you to complete. It will also spawn a bounty, which is a black piece with a money sign on it. If the player is able to defeat it, they will get money reward, but usually I'm going for these pieces for EXP reason. Money is pretty hard to come by in this game, where the random encounter usually net you around 10 to 40 G per battles. Bounty though will give you like 1000 G. The side quests, while having a different backstory, they're usually the same quest over and over again in the form of going here, battle this, and returning. With that being said though, it is usually not a problem in other games if the skin is different enough, maybe with a new mob and stuff like that. We haven't even gotten into the combat part aspect of the game yet. Since we already bring up the mob, I find it's a good time to lay down the first thing I dislike about the game, and that is the fact that there aren't too many enemy sprites in the game. There are 3 different kingdoms with a different land mass. There are also environments such as cave, coastline, but most enemies end up being the same things across the board, which is skeleton, soldier with different colors representing their country, slime, goblin, just to name a few, but that I can forgive as in this is a PSP game. However, the boss enemy also get the same treatment. I have fought maybe over 8 of the same golem and maybe 4 or 5 of the same sprite dragons. Some boss encounter also just use regular monster sprite, which is to me such a big letdown. Next, let's talk about the combat of the game. On the surface, it might look like a turn-based game. However, both the enemy and your unit are going to act at the same time. The battle order depends on the speed of the speed or the AGI stat of the unit. With that being said, this can make the game quite hard, as if you are too slow and are unlucky when your unit can get focused and die before they even get to do anything. The combat revolves around a point called AP, I'm assuming action point. In order to do an action, you will need to spend AP. Stronger action will of course cost more AP. You gain 6 AP at the beginning of your turn, and the leftover can be used on the next round as well. However, the absolute limit of AP you can have is 12 AP, so plan out well how you like to play out your turns. Oh, and if you're able to defeat an enemy, you will also be rewarded with 1 AP as well. AP to me is an interesting mechanic, but I feel like the game does not explore the possibility they can use it as much as I like. What I mean is that there is really little item or ability that manipulate AP. It is most likely because they need to keep the game balanced for the PvP, but really it makes the solo mode feel quite bland, and AP rather feel like a fun mechanic, feel more like something that keep you from having maximum fun. Even using item will consume your AP, and it doesn't consume the same amount of AP. If the item is really good, it will consume more AP. So as you can see, it can feel more like an obstacle than a fun mechanic to play around with. While in combat, characters are spread out in different formations depending on what you said before the battles. Different formations have different benefits such as increasing party speed, defense, attack, etc. Each character will occupy a grid on the map and they can move around. Formation and how you space out your character around the map are pretty important, as there is an AoE spell that can attack more than one space at the same time. So putting characters closer to each other can make you weak against that kind of play. However, if there is character in front of another character in the same row, the front character will protect the back character from a short range attack. From my experience, yeah, it helps a bit depending on the enemy you're facing. Sometimes you face an entire group of ranged unit, then they can ignore the front line and just shoot anyone on the map. And that's when it gets really frustrated, because sometimes if you're unlucky, your back row get focused and they just die. Next, let's talk about learning skill. In this game, as you fight, you will gain mastery depending on the spell and weapon you equip. To learn a new skill, you have to pay your mastery point according to the requirement on the skill scroll. So if you want to learn every skill in the game, you have to keep changing weapons and spell around and fight a lot with them. Equipment in this game is also quite restricted, and it says nothing new, but it's a kind of equipment system that in order to equip something, you must have to have the right stat, and holy, sometimes the stat they ask for is very ridiculous, like an insane amount of stat just to equip a ring that gives you some magic defense or a little bit of defense. The stat is gained by leveling up, and you can also gain permanent stat by using some item as well. As was mentioned before, there is also the old man quest or the old man event that he just randomly show up with a suspicious drink, some juice he made, and he'll ask you to drink it. Of course, it sounds pretty shady. However, if you're lucky, you will get the permanent stat increase, or if you're unlucky, it will reduce your stat permanently and reduce your brave to 1. Anywho, if you just want to always have a positive outcome, you can just save scum this guy, so not too much of a problem. The story of the game you might think will be about the war between the 3 nations. However, in the solo play, the war is only a background story, or more of just a setting. And the main story is about the main character gathering all the same weapon for their ruler. I have no idea if this is the case for all the kingdom or not, since I only played the Knight Kingdom. The story is definitely one of the most disappointing part about the game, where it's reused a lot of same thing over and over again, where most of the time you will run into the rune, fight the guardian golem, grab the weapon, and the rune will collapse. This happened like maybe more than 10 times, and as I already mentioned, they are just reusing the same boss sprite, and it's even worse that this boss doesn't get new patterns or new attack, so every battle is really samey. Luckily, despite the boring story layout, the game has quite a charming character. Lycia, as our lieutenant attendant, is great. I mean, she's funny, cute, and caring. Yeah, pretty much a great waifu material. Then we have the character like the sassy Wish Mira with a fun dialogue exchange between her and the hero. Without this character, I feel like I would not get it to the end of the game. The selling point of this game is definitely the arts. I mean, it's vanillaware. The character design is great and the art style aesthetics is amazing. To top it off, the game also have great music that you will hear over and over and over again, and it might start to be a little bit less great. However, sometimes you are treated with different tracks and that recharge your ear. The difficulty of this game, in my opinion, is quite hard, but not unfair. If this is your first JRPG, then it's definitely not a good one for the beginner. However, if you are a veteran looking for a challenge and a bit of frustration, there's definitely plenty here. Building the character stat right is extremely important. Your acrylic can heal like no damage at all if you did not raise the right stat and equip the right gear. With that being said, Knight History is a good game with pleasing aesthetic. However, I say give it a try. If you did not enjoy the game loop, then there is no need to keep playing, since a lot of the game are just going to be the same thing over and over again. Still can't find out the next JRPG you want to spend time on? How about checking out this video next? On our channel, we share interesting facts we learn from video games. Feel free to subscribe for more contents coming up in the future.